Introduction to Leaflet.JS. So this is an alternative to Google Maps API, or if you want to place maps in your web pages, you can make use of Leaflet.JS. So we'll be discussing that in this video, how to place maps. So here's an overview. Leaflet is the leading open source JavaScript library for mobile-friendly interactive maps. Weighing just about 39 KB of JavaScript, it has all the mapping features most developers ever need. Leaflet is designed with simplicity, performance, and usability in mind. It works efficiently across all major desktops and mobile platforms and can be extended with lots of plugins. It has a beautiful, easy to use, and well-documented API and a simple, readable source code that is a joy to contribute to. So quick start steps. So here we'll be trying to place a map. So the most basic way of placing maps in our web pages. So these are the steps. So the first step is to prepare your page. That is where you're going to include the links, the CSS, and maybe the JavaScript libraries, and then setting up the map. So the width of the map and where you're going to place the map. So with that you can actually already view the map. And how do you place markers? And how do you place pop-ups or working with pop-ups? And then how do we deal with events? So these are the quick steps that we'll be discussing in this video. So first is how to prepare your page. So the first step is to include the Leaflet CSS file in the head section of your document. So here's the code for that, and I'm going to show you that. And anyway, the complete source code will be available for download in this video. So let's try to do that from scratch. I have here a finished one, but we'll be doing it in another page from scratch. So the first step is to include the CSS. So this is the CSS. So I'm going to copy this and then place it in my bare HTML skeleton. So this HTML file only contains my jQuery, my Bootstrap files, and it is basically empty. So I'm going to place my Leaflet CSS inside my head. So inside my head. So that's it. I have now placed my CSS file. So let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. So that's the first step in preparing your page. And the second step is to include the Leaflet JavaScript file after the Leaflet CSS. So important, it should be after the Leaflet CSS. So again, this is the code. So we have CSS. So this is the CDN, and we have the Leaflet.js. So we do that also. So this is my CSS library. So I'm going to copy this and then place inside my so after the CSS file. So that's it, after the CSS file. So I have here now my first two steps. Then next is to put a division element with a certain ID where you want your map to be. Where you want your map to be. So just a division and ID, then place the ID. So it may not be map ID, but of course for simplicity we're going to use map ID. So we'll be using that. I will be trying to include that in our code. So this is our code, but let's try to make a little revision. So we're going to place here div. Since we're using Bootstrap, class equals container. Sorry. Slash div. Then inside the container, I have a card. And inside the card, I have my card body. Let's place a top margin here. Empty, that's 5. And then inside this body, I'm going to place my division. So division ID equals map ID slash div. So the map will be placed inside this division. So that's the third sub-step in preparing your page. So again, what are the steps? First is to include the Leaflet.CSS, include the leaflet or the JavaScript file after the Leaflet.CSS, and then place a division and place an ID on that division. That is where you want your map to be. And then the fourth step is to make sure that the map container has defined height, for example, by setting it in the CSS. So here the height is 180 px. But let's try to revise it a little bit. So I have here my map ID. Let's say width is 600 px. Height is, let's say, for example, for 180 pixels. So that will be my format for my map ID. So I'm going to place a height and width. So that's the fourth step. And then the next step, so the next major step is to set up the map. So let's create a map of the center of University of Luzon with pretty map box street tiles. First, we'll initiate the map and set its view to our chosen geographical coordinates and a zoom level. So these coordinates are more or less near University of Luzon. So if you're going to view the map, then more or less it will show a map near the University of Luzon, that is in Dagupan City, Philippines. So here is one, and this should be placed. Okay, so I'm going to place that in our demo, and that should be placed just below the division where you want the map to be. So script / script. So it's actually a JavaScript. So var my map is equal to l.map map ID. So we have created an object, a map object, and at the same time you have set the view of this map to use this latitude and longitude, and 17 here is the zoom value. Let's just take a look at our map first so that we'll see its progress. So that's the card, and this is our area where the map will be placed. So of course it will not yet appear because we need to place the next code. Then 2. Next, we'll add a tile layer to add to our map. In this case, it's a map box street tile layer. Creating a tile layer usually involves setting the URL template for the tile images, the attribution text, and the maximum zoom level of the layer. In this example, we use the mapbox / streets that v11 tiles from Mapbox Static Tiles API. In order to use tiles from Mapbox, you must also request an access token. because this API returns 512 by 512 tile by default instead of 256 by 256, we will also have to explicitly specify this and offset our zoom by a value of -1. So this is that part with tile layer. So we specify the tile size to be 512 and then zoom offset of -1, and then it's our attribution. So the maximum zoom here says here is 18. So we include that file. All we have to do is to copy that file. So that is this part. So we have defined the tile layer of the map. So after map, okay. So what we have done so far now is we have defined the tile layer of the map. So let's save that, and here is our file a while ago. Once we refresh, there it is. We now have our map, and you notice that here is University of Luzon. So all we have to do is follow the steps, but we'll be adding more. So here again, let's go back. You can just follow this. So this will get the API, and then the maximum zoom is 18, tile size is 512, the zoom offset is -1. Okay, and it says here ID is mapbox street V11. Now actually we can replace this also. I think we'll be doing that later. We'll be trying to replace that later. Okay. So make sure all the code is called after the div. So that's what we have done. So let's go back to our code. So this is the division, and we place the code after the division. And that's it. You have now a working leaflet map. So we have shown that a while ago. It's worth noting that the leaflet's provider agnostic, meaning that it doesn't enforce a particular choice of providers for tiles. You can try replacing mapbox streets V11 with mapbox satellite-V9. So mapbox. Again, let's first take a look at the output. This is the output. What if we replace this one with mapbox satellite? Satellite-V9. So save. So here's my real files. I'll refresh. Oh, did I have the correct satellite-V9? I think I didn't place the correct value. Wait a minute. Should be mapbox satellite-V9. Satellite-V9 mapbox. Oh, I think my spelling is wrong. Satellite-V9. So refresh. So that's now my map, and there is University of Luzon. Now, but I will like to place it back on street. It's V11. Is it street? Streets V11. streets view 11. So once I refresh again, look back to this one. Wherein we can view the streets. So let's continue. Now let's try to add marker. So let's add a marker. L marker, then we have the latitude, longitude, then add to my map. So my map is the ID or the object name. So let's try that. So here's my code. Here's the marker. So a while ago, we added a tile. We created a my map object. We added a tile to my map. Then now we add a marker to my map. I use the same coordinates, 16 something. So of course you can change this one. So I'm going to save. This is my original map. I'm going to refresh. And that is now my marker. So that is where that coordinate is actually pointing. Of course, I can change that one to point at University of Luzon. The next, working with pop-ups. Pop-ups are usually used when you want to attach some information to a particular object on a map. Leaflet has a very handy shortcut for this. The bind pop-up method attaches a pop-up with the specified HTML content to your marker, so the pop-up appears when you click on the object. And the open pop-up method for markers only immediately opens the attached pop-up. You can also use pop-ups as layers. So when you need something more than attaching a pop-up to an object, so var pop-up equals L pop-up. So that's a layer that set the latitude and longitude. Then set content. I am a standalone pop-up. Open. So here we use an open on instead of add to because it handles automatic closing. So open on handles automatic closing of a previously open pop-up when opening the new one, which is good for usability. I think let's first continue with our slide. Then dealing with events. Every time something happens in Leaflet, example user clicks on a marker or map zoom changes, the corresponding object sends an event which you can subscribe to with a function. It allows you to react to user interaction. So just like in this case, so we have here my map on click. This is the event, and we can subscribe to with a function. So this is a function. So that means if we click on the map, this function will be executed, and this function actually will show an alert box. Now each object has its own set of events. The first argument of the listener function is an event object. So E here is the event object. It contains useful information about the event that happened. For example, map click event object. So the map click event object E in the example above, so that's E, has LAT LNG property, so latitude longitude property, which is the location at which the click occurred. So here it is. So this will show the latitude and longitude where the click occurs. Let's improve our example by using pop-up instead of an alert. So in the previous example, it will show an alert box. But let's improve our example by using pop-up instead of an alert. So var pop-up, so we created a pop-up using l.pop-up and then function. So once we click on this, it will execute this function and this function, instead of alert box, it will use a pop-up. Okay, and then we set the latitude, longitude, then set the content. So you click a map at, and then open on my map. So we open the pop-up on the my map. So let's first try that in our source code. So here it is. We copy, and then I paste. So what did this do? First, we created a pop-up object. So in our layer, so L, and then on map, so we have here a function on map, click E, that's the event. It will open the pop-up. So that's a it will open a pop-up and then set the latitude, longitude. So using this E lang, then set content. You click on the map at this one again, the latitude, longitude. Then we convert that to strings because we were joining it with a string. Then open the pop-up on my map. So we do that if we click on the map, and it will again open this function. So we're going to refresh. So if I click on, so here's the pop-up. So once we click, it will show a pop-up and then showing also the latitude and the longitude.